Do you believe in demons?
Still do. Yeah,
Do you?
for sure.
They might be real. But the question about demons is, are there external forces that are playing against you?
Oh,
There are
yeah.
actual entities.
What if the holiest place on earth held the darkest secrets? The Vatican has been at the center of conspiracies for centuries, rituals, forbidden acts, and cover-ups whispered behind closed doors. Even Joe Rogan has raised questions about its sinister side. What's really happening in the shadow of the sacred? Let's pull back the curtain on one of the world's most secretive institutions. Secrets of the Vatican vaults. Whispered legends speak of a vast underground city of secrets, locked away beneath the Vatican's ancient walls. The secret archives, containing 53 miles of shelving, packed with over 35,000 volumes, are rumored to hold treasures beyond imagination and beyond belief. According to high-level insiders, the archives contain irrefutable evidence that the Jesus Christ of the Bible was not a real historical figure, but a fictional invention of early cultists. The scrolls and codices that could bring Christendom crashing down are said to be sealed in a vault within a vault, guarded by a secret order of Vatican Knights. But the archive's forbidden knowledge doesn't end with the Gospels. Whistleblowers claim the Vatican is also hiding proof of extraterrestrial contact, including alien remains and artifacts retrieved from crashed UFOs. Some even say the Church has its own top-secret space program, dedicated to investigating these otherworldly visitors. Strangest of all are the rumors of a Vatican time machine called the Chronovisor. This device, invented by a rogue priest and physicist named Father Ernetti, allegedly allows the Church to record and edit history, including biblical events. Eyewitnesses claim to have watched the crucifixion of Christ in real time, only to see the footage mysteriously vanish from the Vatican's vaults. The Vatican denies these wild speculations, insisting the archives hold nothing but boring bureaucratic records. But the Vatican's darkest secrets aren't all locked away in vaults. Some are hiding in plain sight, carved into the very architecture that millions of pilgrims pass by every day. Secrets in plain sight. Among the Vatican's architectural oddities, none is more disturbing than the figure that dominates the Pope's audience hall. A twisted vision of Christ that seems more at home in a horror film than a holy site. Standing 66 feet tall, the resurrection supposedly represents Christ rising from the dead. In reality, it looks more like a nuclear mutant clawing its way out of the rubble. Its unconventional design has led many to question its symbolism, from the angular metallic form surrounding the figure to what appears to be an unusual crown. Where some see thorns, others have noted their peculiar resemblance to horns, adding to the sculpture's mysterious aura. And that's not even the creepiest part of the audience hall. When viewed from the heavens, the entire building bears an uncanny resemblance to the head of a giant serpent. The Pope's pulpit is nestled right between its gaping jaws, like a forked tongue of deceit. What better place for the deceiver to hide than in plain sight? But the serpentine symbolism doesn't end there. Take a closer look at the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, the heart of Catholicism itself. Squint hard enough, and the ornate decorations of the ceiling start to morph into a pair of reptilian eyes, staring down at the faithful like a malevolent marble basilisk. The serpentine symbolism makes perfect sense when you hear what the Vatican's chief exorcist had to say about who, or what, really walks these sacred halls. The devil in the details. Father Gabriele Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist for over 30 years, claimed to have personally performed over 160,000 exorcisms and dropped a bombshell before he passed away in 2016. In an interview with the Catholic news agency, the elderly priest declared, "The devil resides in the Vatican." Amorth claimed that Satan had infiltrated the highest echelons of the Church, possessing cardinals who do not believe in Jesus and bishops who are linked to the demon. He believed the devil's dark influence was behind the Vatican's greatest scandals and crises, from the endless parade of pedophile priests to the mysterious death of Pope John Paul I, who perished in 1978 after just 33 days in office. In fact, Amorth went so far as to declare that the 1981 assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II was secretly orchestrated by Satan himself in an effort to seize control of the papacy. And let's not forget the Vatican's ultimate dirty deed, the Cadaver Synod of 1897, where Pope Stephen VI dug up the rotting corpse of his predecessor and put the body on trial. With skeletons like that in your closet, are a few demons really that hard to believe? Of course, the Vatican has tried to fight back against the forces of darkness. They even have their own school of exorcism, where priests can learn the sacred art of casting out unclean spirits. Yet while the Church trains priests to cast out demons, they remain blind to the corruption destroying them from within. The Vatican's hypocrisy. In 2019, French journalist Frédéric Martel dropped a bombshell on the Vatican with his book In the Closet of the Vatican: Power, Homosexuality, Hypocrisy. Martel, who spent 4 years interviewing over 1,500 Vatican insiders, claimed that the majority of the Church's clergy are secretly gay and use their power to shield one another from scrutiny. According to Martel, up to 80% of Vatican priests engage in same-sex relationships, creating a hidden culture of grindr hookups, wild parties, and clerical blackmail. But rather than embrace their sexuality, these holy hypocrites ruthlessly denounce homosexuality in public while indulging in it in private. As Martel revealed in a bombshell 2020 appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, this don't ask, don't tell policy has created a velvet mafia of homosexual clergy, whose members use their knowledge of one another's sins to consolidate power and cover up misdeeds. The most horrifying result? A cabal of predator priests who leverage their authority to abuse young boys, knowing their crimes will be covered up by their colleagues in high places. Martel, who spent years infiltrating the gay underground of the Vatican, described a sordid world of clandestine hookups and even a gay sauna steps from the Pope's residence. He claimed that some of the Church's most homophobic cardinals were in fact closeted homosexuals themselves, using their anti-LGBT rhetoric as a smokescreen for their own double lives. If true, these revelations expose more than just individual sins. They reveal the Vatican drowning in its own hypocrisy, where those who preach virtue practice vice behind closed doors. How can an institution that harbors such darkness claim to be a beacon of moral light? The answer would come soon enough, and from the most unlikely of sources: the silent servant who stood at the Pope's right hand. The leak that sunk a Pope. In 2012, the fortress of Vatican secrecy cracked wide open with a scandal that would shake the Church to its foundations. The source wasn't an investigative journalist or a scorned cardinal. It was Paolo Gabriele, the Pope's personal butler, a man who had witnessed too much to stay silent any longer. Gabriele, who had served the Pope for over 20 years, secretly photocopied reams of confidential documents from Benedict's private quarters, including financial records and memos that laid bare the endemic corruption and dysfunction of the Church. He leaked the trove to the Italian media, setting off a firestorm that engulfed the Vatican. The leaked papers, which were later published in the book His Holiness, revealed a cesspool of gay blackmail, political intrigue, and financial malfeasance at the highest levels of the Church. They exposed how a powerful network of closeted homosexual clergy, known as the Lavender Mafia, used their knowledge of one another's secrets to rig Vatican elections and silence whistleblowers. Even more explosively, the documents suggested that Pope Benedict himself was at the center of the web of corruption. The book claimed that Benedict, far from being a reformer, was deeply implicated in many of the Vatican's shadiest dealings, from protecting pedophile priests to funneling church funds to his own family members. The Vatti Scandal sent shockwaves through the Catholic world and proved to be the final nail in the coffin of Benedict's papacy. In February 2013, the embattled Pope shocked the faithful by announcing his resignation, the first papal abdication in over 600 years. While Benedict officially cited his advanced age and declining health as the reason for his departure, insiders knew the real story. The Pope had lost control of his own church, and the Vatti leaks had exposed the rot at its core. Rather than risk a schism, Benedict fell on his own sword. Leaked documents may have toppled a pope, but the Vatican's greatest cover-up happened centuries earlier, when they decided which parts of God's word you were allowed to read. The Bible's forbidden books. 14 sacred books once formed the heart of the Christian faith, until they vanished. In 1684, a secret council of Vatican authorities committed what many consider divine censorship. They systematically purged these ancient texts, known as the Apocrypha, from the Bible itself. Books that Christians had revered for over a millennium were erased from Holy Scripture with the stroke of a pen. But what made these texts so dangerous that the Church would mutilate its own holy book? The official story is that the Apocrypha were removed because they were not considered divinely inspired. But conspiracy theorists smell a cover-up. They say these lost books contained explosive secrets that threatened the Vatican's power. One tome called The Wisdom of Solomon portrays the Messiah not as a divine being, but as a mortal man on a quest for knowledge, a heresy that could rewrite the Gospels themselves. But it gets stranger. When the Apocrypha were banned, all references to Jesus' original name, Jesus, suddenly changed. The Lord's very name was retroactively erased from Scripture and replaced with a more modern spelling. What could be so dangerous about the old version of the Savior's name? Some believe the answers are hidden within the Vatican's forbidden vaults, ancient secrets that, if uncovered, could reveal the true history of Christianity through the original Apocrypha. But while scholars debated lost scriptures, another kind of forbidden document was about to surface: evidence of a billion-dollar Vatican conspiracy. Vatican Bank's billion-dollar heist. In 1974, federal investigators discovered something far different from ancient texts in the Vatican's vaults: a paper trail leading to the largest religious fraud in history. The US Justice Department had stumbled upon evidence that the Holy See was knee-deep in a scheme involving nearly $1 billion in counterfeit securities orchestrated by an unholy alliance of mafia bosses and corrupt priests. The question wasn't just how they planned to pull it off, but why the Vatican would risk everything for dirty money. In the early 70s, the New York mob sent a team of wise guys to Rome to meet with a mysterious Vatican cardinal. In secret meetings at the Holy See, the mafiosi laid out their scheme. They would print millions of fake corporate bonds and stocks, so perfect they would fool any expert. The gangsters would sell these forgeries to the Vatican Bank, which would use them as collateral to secure massive loans. Once the money was wired, the made men and the cardinal would split the proceeds 50-50, and the Vatican would be left holding $1 billion bag. No one knows for sure if the Vatican was a patsy or a partner in the heist. Did they knowingly buy the bogus securities, hoping to cash out before the scam was exposed? Or were they duped by the Goodfellas, left to take the fall for the biggest bank fraud in history? Only the Holy See knows for sure. But one thing is certain: when it comes to cold, hard cash, the Vatican Bank doesn't always practice what the Church preaches. And fake securities were amateur hour compared to the Vatican Bank's real specialty, turning blood money into holy water. How the Vatican cleans dirty money. For decades, the Vatican Bank has harbored one of the Holy See's darkest secrets: its role as the premier money launderer for the criminal underworld. The pious institution has been the go-to destination for mafia bosses, corrupt politicians, and shady businessmen looking to make their dirty money disappear. So how does the Vatican get away with scrubbing the sins off so much ill-gotten gain? 2 words: sovereign immunity. You see, the Vatican isn't just the Catholic capital, it's also an independent city-state with its own laws and government. This means the Pope's bankers can stonewall any outside attempt to investigate their dealings. They're essentially untouchable, and boy, have they taken advantage of that legal loophole. In the 70s and 80s, the Vatican Bank washed hundreds of millions for the Italian mafia, with cops and prosecutors helpless to stop it. But the crazy thing is, this holy money laundering didn't stop with the Godfather era. In 2012, a Vatican Monsignor got busted smuggling $26 million in laundered cash on a private jet. The irony is, the same institution that literally invented confession somehow feels no need to admit its own financial sins. Yet today's Vatican bankers are small-time operators compared to the man who pulled off Christianity's greatest conversion, of power into divine right. Constantines Big Con. The Vatican's darkest secrets stretch back to its very beginning, to the pivotal moment when Christianity transformed from a persecuted rebel religion to an empire-conquering creed. This seismic shift wasn't orchestrated by saints or prophets, but by a calculating pagan emperor, Constantine the Great. In 312 AD, Constantine was locked in a brutal war for control of the Roman Empire. On the eve of a decisive battle, he claimed to have seen a vision of a cross in the sky, along with the words, "By this sign, conquer." Constantine immediately converted to Christianity and ordered his soldiers to paint crosses on their shields. The next day, he crushed his enemies and became the undisputed master of Rome. There was just one problem. At the time, Christianity was an outlawed religion, seen as a dangerous and subversive sect. To make it palatable to the masses, Constantine would have to fundamentally transform it from a radical faith into a tool of statecraft. And that's exactly what he did. Constantine blended Christian symbols and holidays with pagan traditions, creating a hybrid religion that was half Jesus and half Jupiter. He moved Christ's birthday to the pagan winter solstice and built the first Vatican on top of a Roman sun temple. Even Constantine's coins still bore the old pagan gods. However, according to the scholar Freak, who appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, Constantine's conversion may have been more political than spiritual. Freak argues that Constantine never truly abandoned his pagan roots and continued to worship the unconquered sun, even as he made Christianity the official religion of the empire. So was the rise of the church a divine miracle or a cynical ploy by a pagan emperor to unify his fractured empire? The answer may lie in the piles of bodies Constantine left in his wake. The first Christian emperor was also one of the cruelest, executing his own wife and son and massacring thousands of his own subjects. But Constantine's bloodshed wasn't the only shocking secret the church would keep. Some say the Vatican holds mysteries not of this earth. Aliens hiding in the Vatican. The Vatican's vaults have long been rumored to house angels and demons. But what if they're hiding something even more extraordinary? In recent years, the Holy See has made a stunning transformation, moving from fierce denial of extraterrestrial life to cryptic hints that otherworldly beings may have already left their mark on the church. The question isn't just whether aliens exist, it's what the Vatican knows about these celestial visitors. The story starts in 1998, when a French conspiracy theorist claimed the Vatican was hiding physical evidence of aliens in a sealed vault deep beneath the Apostolic Library. His proof? 2 elongated skulls of extraterrestrial origin, he said, were photographed in the secret chamber before the entrance was bricked up. The Vatican dismissed his tale as a hoax, but they would say that, wouldn't they? Flash forward to 2008, when the Vatican's own chief astronomer shocked the faithful by declaring alien life not only possible, but probable throughout the universe. Just as we consider earthly creatures as a brother and sister, said Father Jose Funes, we should also talk about an extraterrestrial brother. This was a radical U-turn for a church that had long rejected the notion of aliens as demonic pseudoscience. So what changed? Could it be that the Vatican's vaults really do contain evidence of alien contact, just waiting to be revealed to the flock? Some say the first revelation could come when the Hubble's successor, the James Webb Space Telescope, switches on in 2021. With a vision 100 times more powerful than the Hubble, the Webb could be the eye that finally spots our cosmic neighbors. Will the Vatican be the first to break the news that we are not alone? The Vatican's stance on aliens may be evolving, but their archives have just exposed an even darker secret: the truth behind history's most infamous religious purge. The Knights Templars' secret pact. The year was 1307. In a single night, under direct orders from French King Philip IV, every Knight Templar in France was dragged from their beds in chains. The charges: heresy, blasphemy, and unspeakable depravity. These legendary warrior monks had fought and died for the Church for 2 centuries, but now they faced extinction. The Vatican, led by Pope Clement V, quickly blessed Philip's purge and abolished the entire Templar order by 1312. Under torture, the knights confessed to horrific crimes before being burned alive by the thousands. But 700 years later, a shocking discovery in the Vatican's own archives would reveal the truth. The knights were innocent, and the Pope had known it all along. In 2001, a Vatican researcher studying medieval manuscripts stumbled upon the Chinon parchment, a long-lost record of the Templars' trials. It showed that Pope Clement had absolved the knights of heresy and declared their confessions invalid and coerced in 1308. 4 years before he publicly disbanded the order. This explosive find rewrites the history of the Templars' demise. Far from being depraved heretics, the Vatican's own documents prove the Knights were faithful servants of the Church until the end. So why would Clement acquit the Templars in private, then condemn them in public? Historians say the Pope was caught between the French king and his own conscience. The Templars were the most powerful religious order in Europe, with a network of banks and castles that rivaled any monarchs. Clement likely feared that crossing the vindictive Philip would mean open war between France and the Vatican. So instead, he sacrificed the Templars to save the Holy See. But others see an even darker pact in the parchment. They say Clement agreed to destroy the Knights in exchange for a share of their immense wealth and arcane knowledge. Did the Templars possess ancient secrets that threatened the Church? Revelations so shattering, they had to be silenced at the stake. All we know is that the Chinon parchment casts the Knights not as heretics, but as martyrs to the Pope's power. Now their ghosts cry out for justice in the Vatican halls where they were betrayed. The Vatican's betrayal of the Templars revealed how holy men could turn against their own. But in modern Africa, this ancient sin would repeat itself on an unimaginable scale. The Vatican's genocide ghosts. In 1994, the small African nation of Rwanda descended into a hell on earth. In just 100 days, Hutu militias slaughtered over 800,000 Tutsi civilians in a genocide that shocked the world. But amid the horror, a disturbing question emerged. What role did the Catholic Church play in the massacre? The answer is more chilling than you can imagine. Rwanda is one of the most Catholic countries in Africa, with over 60% of the population belonging to the Church. So when the killing began, tens of thousands of terrified Tutsis sought refuge in parishes, convents, and missions. They thought the Church would shield them from the machetes and bullets. They were tragically wrong. According to Rwandan government reports and survivor testimonies, priests, nuns, and bishops were directly complicit in the slaughter. Many churchmen looked the other way as militias stormed their parishes to massacre Tutsi families. Others actively collaborated with the killers, handing over lists of Tutsis in their congregations or even joining the slaughter themselves. One notorious priest named Athanasi Saromba ordered bulldozers to demolish his own church with 2,000 Tutsi men, women and children huddled inside. He was later convicted of genocide by the UN. In churches outside Kigali now, display cases hold the skulls of those who died, along with their possessions and even the clubs used to kill them. These churches, meant to be sanctuaries, became slaughterhouses. Many heroic priests and sisters risked their lives to hide Tutsis, true saints in a time of devils. But the Vatican has never fully accounted for the sins of its Rwandan shepherds, who became as savage as the wolves. To this day, Rwandan genocide monuments stand in the ruins of churches, blood still staining their altars. While modern priests betrayed their flocks in Rwanda, they were following an ancient tradition, set by popes who turned the Holy See into a den of depravity. The Devil's Popes. The Vatican's history is stained not just by the sins of its servants, but by the monsters who sat upon its very throne. These infamous bad popes weren't just corrupt. They were creatures of such spectacular evil and depravity that they made the notorious Borgias look like saints in comparison. Take Pope John XII, who was elected at the tender age of 18 in the 10th century. This teenage tyrant turned the Vatican into his own personal Caligula's palace. He hosted drunken orgies in the papal apartments, gambled away the church's riches, and even castrated and murdered his enemies, including, allegedly, his own confessor. The Romans became so disgusted with John's antics that they ran him out of town in 963. Appropriately enough, the debauched brat pope died of a stroke at age 27 while in bed with a married woman. But John looks positively saintly compared to Pope Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia in 1431. To call Alex a holy father is like calling Jack the Ripper a ladies' man. He bribed his way into the papacy, fathered at least 7 bastards, and turned the Vatican into a whorehouse where cardinals bought and sold teenage. When he wasn't pimping, Alexander was plotting. He waged wars to install his sons as the rulers of Italy and used hired hitmen to assassinate his rivals. Some historians even believe he slept with his daughter Lucrezia. Fittingly, Alexander died by accidentally drinking a poisoned cup of wine meant for a Vatican guest. But even the Borgias can't hold a blasphemous candle to Pope Stephen VI. This 9th century maniac is infamous for putting a dead pope on trial. Stephen had the rotting corpse of his predecessor, Formosus, dug up and plopped on the throne to face judgment. He screamed at the mouldering body for hours, declaring it unfit to have ever been pope. Then, in a scene straight out of a horror movie, he cut off the corpse's blessing fingers and dumped it in the Tiber River. Stephen himself was strangled to death a few months later. Stephen's grim spectacle proved no crime was too depraved for a pope. But according to medieval chroniclers, the Vatican's greatest scandal wasn't about corruption, it was about gender. The She-Pope. The most forbidden tale in Vatican history tells of a woman who shattered the church's ultimate glass ceiling. Pope Joan, who allegedly disguised herself as a man and ascended to the highest throne in Christendom. For centuries, medieval chronicles insisted she was real, a brilliant and devout woman who managed to fool the entire Vatican hierarchy. But was this audacious story a pious myth, or a truth so dangerous it had to be buried? Here's how the story goes. Sometime in the 9th century, a prodigious young Englishwoman named Joan disguised herself as a monk named John to get an education. Her talents were so impressive that she rocketed up the Vatican ladder, eventually getting elected Pope John VIII around 855 AD. Incredibly, Joan fooled the College of Cardinals for over 2 years, ruling the church as skillfully as any man. Then one day, while riding a papal procession, she suddenly went into labor and delivered a child right there in the street. Busted as a female impostor, the crowd stoned Pope Joan to death. For centuries after, it's said newly elected popes had to sit on a special birthing chair to have their manhood checked, just in case another woman tried to breach the Vatican's sausage party. The church now dismisses Joan's saga as pure fantasy, but some scholars still insist there's evidence for a female pope hidden in the Vatican's vaults. After all, the church has a long history of keeping inconvenient women in their place, and few places in the Catholic hierarchy are more restrictive to the ladies than the inner sanctum of the sisterhood. While the church keeps women locked out of power, it keeps its doors wide open to something else: dirty money and criminal connections. The holy heists. For an institution built on sacred vows, the Vatican Bank has an unholy habit of appearing on police wiretaps with mobsters. This not-so-holy bank has been caught red-handed laundering mafia millions, running elaborate Ponzi schemes and moving literal suitcases of blood money through its sacred vaults. In 2014, 2 nuns returning from missionary work were caught by airport cops with almost 4 pounds of pure cocaine stuffed in their luggage. They claimed they were set up, but police believed the coke nuns were mules for a massive drug ring headquartered in, you guessed it, Vatican City. Because here's the thing about the Vatican: it isn't just the world's tiniest nation, it's also the world's shadiest. Despite having fewer than 1,000 full-time residents, Vatican City has the highest per capita crime rate in the world, with 1.5 criminal cases per citizen. The Vatican's dirty little secret is that it's the ultimate haven for scoundrels with a seminary degree. Because it's technically a sovereign nation, the Vatican can refuse to cooperate with any criminal investigation, even of its own citizens. Which means if some arch-criminal with a Roman collar stabs you in St. Peter's Square, the Pope's cops can tell the Italian Carabinieri to screw off. No wonder the Vatican's streets are stalked by pickpockets and plagued by mysterious murders. In 1998, a Vatican judge's daughter was found knifed to death in the papal gardens. The case was never solved. Coincidentally, this clerical crime dome is the perfect place to make massive amounts of dirty money disappear, like the billions in mafia cash that flowed through the Vatican Bank for decades. The gangsters knew that once their blood cash hit an account with a papal seal, no cop on earth could trace it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.